We will be speaking about alignment in this video. The most difficult thing to align on is risks. Documenting risks comes after voicing and aligning them, and even though extremely important, is not the goal in itself. Some delivery managers, scrum masters document rather than communicate, explain it comprehensively to the relevant stakeholders. Even communicating the risks is not enough. It digests better if risks are delivered with empathy rather than cold professionalism. It can be done with kindness and genuine understanding of the big picture for multiple teams' impact rather than a narrow-minded impact on a team, or at least with a conscious understanding of an unknown impact if you have no visibility on other departments. Some of us genuinely try to mitigate risks rather than inserting them in a raids table to wash our hands off the responsibility. How is it clear to our own selves, to our own internal integrity barometer, that we are doing the genuine mitigation versus just drawing tables or risk charts? If we think about the risks during non-working hours, trying to find solutions, we think how to present it to the relevant stakeholders so that they accept it, then we care. Concerning risk management, it is a sort of violence to convince stakeholders to do things for their own good, ultimately because your definition of good is not the same as theirs. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, so other stakeholders might not see a risk in the same light as you do. Your responsibility as a manager, a leader of any kind, is to understand fully where they stand, their exact point of view, and help them meet you halfway. You are a bridge. It is unrealistic to expect that if code quality, for example, is only respected at 50%, that is 50% of the time it is properly reviewed, looked upon, it is unrealistic to expect that code review can be improved another 40% to reach 40 plus 50, that is 90% quality in a matter of days, just because you voiced it once or twice with a client stakeholder. Your good, your standards, your values might be significantly different than someone else's, and it takes multiple meetings, emails, leadership communications directly from the client to their own organization to produce incremental change. Your good is different than mine. Your standards of purity, for example, might be completely different than mine. Let's illustrate it with an example. I do not drink coffee. I never did because there are receptors on the heart, to put it simply, that are stimulated by caffeine. Check it for yourself in research papers, dear viewer. These caffeine receptors activate the heart even when it's on its last reserves of power for the day. That is exhausting for the body. When it's already running on its 10% battery and reactivated with caffeine, it comes to minus 10%. Yes, we received that boost of 20% from minus 10 to plus 10. But at what cost? So my standard of purity and body care include no caffeine, while your standard might include a standard dose of caffeine, or you practically live on it. Depending on how far you are from me on that spectrum of caffeine consumption, it will take proportionately more time to produce incremental change in you, just because the laws of physics are respected. There is a longer distance to cross between our values. It will take more time to align if we are not on the same wavelength. So I'm illustrating this with an arrow separating our caffeine consumption, provided you even want to reduce your caffeine consumption. One line is your conviction, caffeine is very good for health, or at least for productivity, and you consume plenty of it. And another line with my zero caffeine consumption on the other side of the spectrum. In this case, first, an alignment is necessary. Then, when we are in the same line, so to speak, a gradual, gentle, transparent, but not malicious approach is needed in order to bring your caffeine consumption closer to zero. That can only happen when we are on the same line. Intuitively, we all understand this, yet sometimes, as project managers, we are trying to produce change, mitigate risks with client stakeholders, while subconsciously knowing that not only are we on the opposite side of the spectrum, but we are not even on the same line. We are not on the same page, as the English phrase so aptly puts it. These videos I'm making, for example, they are a sort of scrum of opinions. Stories of incremental change of attitude are so much more exciting than the ones we have in the sprint backlog, aren't they? Now, the second point, which I'd like to illustrate, is this. What hampers or prevents alignment? One of the obstacles of alignment is a judgmental attitude. Sometimes a judgmental attitude coming from our own good selves is a conscious or subconscious way to separate ourselves, to be on different lines, on different pages in regard to another person. It is so harmful to carry a judgmental attitude like a suit of armor because it prevents us from seeing the other person and becoming mindful that we are not on the same page, but we could be. There are multiple reasons besides a judgmental attitude leading to being at cross purposes. To be at cross purposes. What does it mean to be at cross purposes? It is basically being on different lines, each line going into a different direction, to a different goal, purpose, or destination. Now, instead of illustrating a line, I will illustrate a staircase because it is like climbing steps up on a ladder to convince someone of something. Sometimes you will play middleman, trying to bridge the gap between leadership of a company and the people actually implementing the decision. How to steer the conversation, which stakeholders to involve in order to close the gap between the leadership deadlines and the implementation teams actually committing to those dates.